In the 90s, there were many Japanese titles that never saw an official release in the West, meaning that in order to play them you either needed to learn Japanese, which isn't an easy task, or rely on fan translations which often contained a lot of errors or liberties from those that did those translations. One such game that had suffered this fate was Tales of Phantasia. The first game in the now long-standing Tales of series, it has still criminally only received one official localization, which was sadly for the Game Boy Advance. The original, the Sony PlayStation, and the Sony PlayStation Portable versions all have no official translations, despite how popular the series has become in the West. As an aside, there was also an iOS version of the game that was in English, but it was removed from the store back in 2014 and isn't worth mentioning. It had microtransactions, so that's probably for the best. Today, I'm going to look at Tales of Phantasia Full Voice Edition for the Sony PlayStation Portable, released by Namco Bandai in Japan in 2006. As a disclaimer, my Japanese level is sufficient enough to understand majority of what's going on in the game. I would suggest that if you're around JLPT N3 or N2 level, then you should be fine to play this game in native Japanese and have a basic understanding of the narrative. I also want to mention that there are differences in how some of the characters' names were translated based on the katakana readings. Please don't get all up in my comments telling me that I'm wrong for translating Cless as Cless. For example, as the transliteration of katakana isn't a simple affair, and the purpose of this video is not for debating such things. With that out of the way, let us begin. Tales of Phantasia places us in the shoes of Cless, the son of a master swordsman in the village of Toltus. He leads a pretty easy, carefree life with his friend Chester, a boy skilled with the use of a bow. One day, the two boys decide to head to the nearby forest to hunt some game. When they return, they discover that their village has been destroyed, Chester's younger sister slain, and Cless's parents murdered, all in the search for a pendant that Cless himself currently possesses. Leaving Chester behind to bury his sister's remains, Cless heads to the nearby city of Euclid to shelter with his uncle. However, misfortune finds him here as his uncle turns him over to authorities after having his own life threatened. Meeting with the man that killed his parents, Mars, the Black Knight takes Cless's pendant and throws him in prison. In jail, Cless meets with Mint, a girl whose mother possessed a pendant of similar nature to Cless's. After escaping from prison, the two find themselves in the house of Morrison, a mysterious man who claims to have known both Cless and Mint's parents. Cautioning them of impending danger, he requests that they remain at his manse and heads off to a nearby crypt alone. Disobeying Morrison's request, with Chester in tow, the party follow him into the ancient tomb, where they soon come face to face with Mars, who is now in possession of both pendants. Casting the pendants aloft toward a sealed casket, he invokes ancient magic that releases a powerful being. This being, known as Deus, obliterates his summoner, then turns his attention on the remaining people within his crypt. Before Deus can kill them, Morrison uses the last of his strength to send both Cless and Mint into the past, in the hopes that they can find individuals who can use magic and bring them back to the present time to defeat Deus once and for all. What I enjoyed about this game was that the villain had a motive for his actions, which is gradually revealed over the course of the adventure. If you're familiar with the SNES version of the game, you'll know that it starts with this quote from Morrison: "Truly, if there is evil in this world, it lies within the heart of mankind." This quote is a good summary for what to expect of the game. Over the course of the adventure, time and time again, you will encounter the results of mankind's ambition, whether it be through the destruction of other nations, or harnessing forbidden power in order to better the lives of their own people, or for military gain. Additionally, you will often see repeated themes of racism, which is directed most strongly toward members of society who have mixed elven and human blood. It also seems like the game's writer, Yoshiharu Gotanda, was obsessed with J.R.R. Tolkien, considering the use of the elves and dwarves in this game. Not to mention the blatant use of the Moria mines. You shall not pass! Some people may look at this game and claim that it's trying too hard to be like Chrono Trigger, considering the similarities in time travel. However, I felt that where Chrono Trigger's narrative focus was on the time travel mechanic, Tales of Phantasia only uses it sparingly as a narrative device, rather than an actual philosophy of the game. The games are about as different as an RPG and a side-scrolling shooter. During the course of the adventure, Cless and his friends will travel to the past, and also to the future, but as the player you have no control over this mechanic, and the game never places a heavy focus on seeing the changes made in the past being reflected in the future. Rather, its sole purpose is to capture Deus, who can slip between the time stream. In the first instance of time travel, it's done to find party members who can harness magic, which is a dead art form in the current age. After returning to the present, the next point of travel is to the future, where Deus escaped to and is causing havoc. The narrative focus of the game is on the preservation of magic and life, as well as a commentary on the discrimination faced by those born of mixed blood. Navigation of the world is mostly done afoot, with the odd boat trip and later the ability to fly. During your adventure you can find treasure hidden within the various locations that you visit. I was a little disappointed that the selection of treasures were mostly common items that were easy to come by, with a small smattering of rare treasures. You will come across both blue and red treasure chests, and though I initially thought that the chest's colour would denote whether a treasure was rare or common, it didn't seem to mean anything. Comparatively, some games of the same era, like say Final Fantasy VI, had treasures placed in a calculated way, so I was disappointed to find that this wasn't the case in Tales of Phantasia. That's not to say that you shouldn't open every chest you come across, just be aware that you will probably end up maxing out your items with pointless trinkets. Though Luda's code is that you should. Just don't have your hopes up for finding anything special, so that when you do find something special you can allow yourself to be elated, as some of Archie's spells can only be obtained in this manner. Battles take the form of random encounters which draw you into a separate screen in the middle of your stride. These encounters can be quite common, but if you don't like the frequency you can use an item called a holy bottle, which will limit the number of battles you are forced into for a short time. Tales of Phantasia uses a linear motion battle system, which sees a character standing in a line with enemies either in front of, behind, or surrounding the party. You take control of Cless primarily, and can use a menu system to command the other characters to use their spells, though they also can operate on their own based on tactics that you assign them in the menu outside of battle. Pressing the attack button will make Cless approach and assault the nearest enemy with his equipped weapon, and then return to the party after delivering his attack. In order to sustain a continued assault, you must hold the analog stick in the direction of the enemy and continue to press the attack button. Cless has a standard attack for hitting ground enemies, as well as a separate one for aerial enemies, which is triggered by holding up on the analog stick before pressing the attack button. You can assign up to 4 special attacks to Cless before, or even during battle. Each is assigned to a button combination that correlates to the analog stick. One for not pressing the analog stick at all, one for pressing up, one for pressing down, and the last for pressing either the left or right direction, in addition to the special attack button. Any attack dealt to you by an enemy will interrupt your special attacks, and more importantly, will inhibit your mages from preparing their spells. This can be very deadly if you are facing enemy spellcasters that are usually hidden behind melee enemies and not easy for Cless to get to. In these situations, I'd recommend having one of your magic users first cast a low TP quick cast spell in order to distract the backline magic users before casting high damaging spells against them. 2 attack spells from an enemy mage can be enough to wipe your entire party, so I cannot stress this point enough. Cless's special moves are called Orgi, which is a sword art taught to him by his father. Some of these have a mastery meter that grows every time Cless uses a said technique. Through the adventure you may find swordsmen around the world that will offer to sell you higher forms of Orgi. Even if you buy these, you cannot use them until you have mastered the basic techniques that are contained within them, so it pays to use and master all of Cless's arts, even though the TP cost of some of them can be quite high. This can be mitigated through the use of equipment, though this would be in place of other accessories that could raise other stats. Managing your equipment is very important, as some have the ability to absorb certain elements, and some even have the ability to affect the field environment, such as the sorcery ring or the Derris emblem. In addition to the 2 accessory slots, each character can equip a weapon, helmet, arm guard, chest piece, and footwear. I recommend seeking out the unique equipment for each character too, as they can be really useful for raising your statistics, though these are sometimes hard to come by as they may come from easy to miss side quests, such as Mint's White Gloves, which comes from the Elwyn and Nancy side quest of the past. For most of the game you are accompanied by Mint, Clarth, and Archie, All 3 are magic users, so it pays to protect them at all costs. You can open the menu during battle to instruct them on what abilities they should use, though like I said before, they can operate independently. For the most part, the AI of your allies is good, but there may be times when they will cast spells that are useless to the battle situation. If you feel like they shouldn't be casting a particular spell, you can press square over it in the field menu or in the battle menu, which will remove it from their casting list. Of course, you can still manually instruct them to cast. Spells pause the action in battle when cast, similarly to how Secret of Mana handles magic use. Early in the game, spells have short cast times, so it didn't bother me too much, but later when spell animations became much longer, I felt that this interrupted the battle's flow. Mint is your party healer, so she will spend most of the battles healing injured allies as well as buffing Cless. She also has an invaluable skill called Pikohanma, Pow Hammer in the English version, which can stun an enemy. It becomes essential to spam this later in the game as it can be cast quickly and is good for preventing enemy mages from casting devastating spells on your party. Klath is your summoner. Through the adventure, he makes pacts with various elemental beings that he can then summon into battle. I personally didn't find him to be any more useful than Archie, but I guess it comes down to personal preference. Finally, Archie is your mage. She will learn new abilities by finding them in treasure chests or buying them from people that offer them to you. I found her to be the most versatile of all the party members, as some of her spells can do a lot of damage. Plus, she's flying on a broomstick and is sometimes out of reach, and there was one instance where a boss wasn't even able to attack her, which caused me to win the battle because everyone else had died. You can get 2 other party members, one which is part of the story and the other which involves a side quest that I didn't see through to completion on this playthrough. In all, there are 6 characters to build your party from, though Cless is a non-negotiable. After each battle, you will automatically regenerate a small amount of your TP, though it's not nearly enough to sustain a long stint through a dungeon. This is where cooking comes in. Throughout the world are many people willing to teach you their magical recipes. When you learn one, and if you have the right ingredients, once between each battle you may request one of your party members to cook something. Each recipe has a different effect, and all recipes increase their potency based on the proficiency of the person cooking it, which rises each time a person cooks said recipe to a maximum of 5 stars. I thought this was a nice way to recover both HP and TP between battles without having to rely on your limited stock of healing items, as unfortunately Tales of Phantasia places a limit on the number of items you can carry, with the maximum being 15 of any one item. Having the ability to cook means that you can preserve your healing items for the boss battles that invariably occur at the end of most of the dungeons. One thing that I really enjoyed about the game is that as you're travelling along the world map, you have the ability to pause and have a conversation with your party members. These are called Skits in later games, and it was nice to see it implemented into the PSP version of Tales of Phantasia. These are all fully voiced, though there are no subtitles in either English or Japanese, so you have to really focus to be able to comprehend what your party members are saying. Of course, they are also struggling against the unbalanced world map music to be heard. If you are ever lost and don't know where to go, pressing select to hear the skit will generally point you in the right direction. The skits that relate to where you need to go next are repeatable, which is handy if you didn't catch what they said the first time or are just generally lost within the game. There are, however, unique skits where the characters will talk about recent events, which you can only listen to once, so you really need to concentrate on what they are saying. Though I never felt that I missed out even if I didn't catch everything, as the story is pretty straightforward and easy to comprehend. At many points in the journey, the party will grow and develop not only as people but also in their battle prowess. To mark these auspicious occasions, the party members are all individually given titles that you can equip to them to show off what they've achieved. In some other Tales of titles, I know that this can affect a character's statistic growth when they level up, or even change their outfit in the field or battle. However, in Tales of Phantasia, these titles are collectible only and cosmetic in nature. Other than someone remarking on your titles when you talk to them in Euclid later in the game, these have no effect on how you play. Though if you do like to 100% games, you may want to go out of your way to collect them all. Plus, some of the scenes that you acquire them from are quite charming. One of the most impressive aspects of the game for me was the graphics. Where most SNES era pixel games tended to have houses full of almost empty rooms that don't look lived in, Tales of Phantasia has a real attention to detail in making sure the locations are bursting with vibrancy. I understand this isn't the SNES version, like I said before, this is the PSP version of the game that I'm reviewing, but this is basically a glow-up of the SNES version, so nothing was really changed in taking the SNES art and putting it into the PSP. They're basically the same with a glow-up. Some houses even have their own toilets and bathrooms. Unprecedented. The environments are all full of vibrant colours, with little details that bring the world to life, such as water rippling when Cless walks through it, or dragonflies buzzing around a sleepy village. The character battle sprites have more realistic proportions as opposed to the original version of the game too, which I thought was a nice touch, and the spell effects are all flashy and fun to watch, the first couple of times. The opening animation is beautiful, and you will also be gifted with another animated cutscene midway into the game, which I thought was a nice surprise. Typically I find that the Tales of games aren't always best known for having good memorable soundtracks. That's not to say that the games have bad OSTs, it's just that they generally aren't that catchy. I can report that that's not the case for Tales of Phantasia. I spent a while looking for the tracks contained in this version of the game, and whilst there is no independent PSP version of the OST, the tracks can all be found on the Tales of Phantasia 20th Anniversary Soundbox, which also has the PS1, SNES and GBA versions of the various tracks. My favourite track is called As Time Goes On, which is played in the past version of Euclid. It has such a tranquil feel which just touches my soul. I could sit listening to it all day. I also really like Be Absent-Minded, which plays whenever a really sad event happens. This track, coupled with the excellent voice acting, made me really sad in the opening of the game, where Cless is yelling for his parents to open their eyes after they've just been murdered.
母さんしっかりクリス逃げなさいおじの住む北の都ユークリッドにあいつらはお前のペンダントあいつらって誰一体誰がこんなことを父さんは私が人質に取られなければ母さん目を開けてよ母さん
The game has an excellent voice cast that really brings the characters to life, and I can't emphasize this enough. And this makes the PSP version the creme de la creme of all of the Tales of Phantasia games that have ever been released. Tales of Phantasia marks one of the first efforts of Namco to make a meaningful RPG for the home console. Whilst Japanese may be a barrier to some in being able to play the game, you can get away with a mid-range level Japanese ability to understand it, or you can resort to the fan translations or the official Game Boy Advance media. With the expansion of the voice acting in this edition to encompass almost all the cutscenes, the Sony PlayStation Portable version of the game is my pick of the bunch. Joining a colourful cast of characters on an epic quest spanning 3 time periods, exploring themes of racial tensions and the exploitation of natural resources for capital gain, you won't be able to put this title down. If you ever have the chance to play this wonderful gem, I highly recommend it. By the way, there are still many Japanese games that exist that have never received an official localization. Are there any titles that you would like to see remade or remastered in the future with an official English translation? Let me know in the comments. This has been Venoir with a review of Tales of Phantasia, full voice edition for the Sony PlayStation Portable. If you like this video, feel free to like and subscribe for more Japanese game content. As always, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you all again next time. Take care of yourselves, and bye bye for now.
No